We can change the world, bro. We totally can. You just got to end your obsession with money. If all action in society is quantified by money, that means the only people who can create meaningful change are the ones who have money. That means you are saying, I am tacitly giving all of the power to reshape society to the rich. You have to be willing to engage in, this is crazy, but to engage in real system change that doesn't require, creepy, revolution stuff, is that, damn, I forgot, I lost my train of thought. Is you have to work towards it without being motivated by the reward of money. Like, I know so many people at my age who are just like, okay, I don't want to be in the front. I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to fight the system anymore. I just want to settle down. I want to have kids. I want to get a house. And somebody else will figure it out. Who the fuck else is going to figure it out? Who the fuck is going to fix things? Who the fuck is going to fucking solve this shit? Who's going to propose a solution? Who's going to create new systems? Fuck, it's gotta be us. We gotta just try. And there are so many creative and clever solutions. I've talked to so many smart, intelligent people these last few weeks with so many incredible ideas. And it's like we all are seeing a little piece of something larger. And I want to hear all of those voices come together as one. I talk to people about this idea of like a manifesto of manifestos, or a constitution of constitutions, just as a metaphor, not as the actual end goal. But that if all of these brilliant minds put to word as clearly as they could in their mind's eye, represent what this vision of the future that they have. We all are sharing our individual perspectives of the future in either a manifesto or a white paper or a book or a thesis. Just like, this is my vision of reality. And then you stream those together through generative modeling, through GPT-3, in a way that is parameterized so it knows the source. It can learn over time which sources are most reliable and consistent over time to their own word, as well as the word of others in the future. That's very complex and hard to understand. I get that. But I don't think that out of the gate, if you just picked up an alien who had never heard of capitalism and tried to explain to it the way capitalism worked, I don't think they would get it. I think it's a very abstract thing. And so it is possible that the new solution is going to be very far removed from economics, the concept of economics. I think it's very likely there will be some sort of token associated with it, and that will be associated with some sort of distributed data store. There'll be decentralization involved in it. It will involve the non-hierarchical organization of action. So that means you have to create some sort of system that is in the network, aggregating these different perceptions and aiding in the collective decision-making process. That is 100% completely doable. But I want us to jump forward about 10 years and skip the whole black box thing, which when we just shit around making database schemas about saving specific voting things and all of these tokens the way that they're working right now, these scoring systems that can't learn. Like doing generative modeling where it's learning which voices are most consistent over time, that has metastability.
It's metastable, meaning that it's evolving but not volatile.
It has evolvability.
Evolvability.
That means that the way that it is rewarding, the way it's function can evolve over time while also being consistent over time to the past ways that it was represented. There are a lot of, the way the current system works is very, very, very rigid and intentionally slow. And anyways, I don't know if any of this is making sense. Eventually, I hope this stuff will make sense because I've connected to enough people and, the ideas, we're all exposed to the same information. So there's all this crazy creative concurrent ideation. And, I really believe that it's possible, but it's weird because I would say at the fundamental part of it, for new systems, there needs to be accountability to your word online specifically, but by choice, not a forced accountability, of course, but like you have the option to opt into a network to say like, I want to stake my word because, I want to interact with people and do good work together, but because doing good work with people often involves like complete strangers at the world scale, there's a problem establishing trust. And even when people feel like they know each other pretty well, we're not really understanding each other that well. And so we have a shit ton of conflict about money because money is not a good interface. It is a simple, efficient interface because it can be represented by a physical object like a clam or a gem, as an exchange token. That's great. But we're so far evolved beyond that. Now, like, money is in a computer, and we have all these layers of security to like even make that digital token work. So why not change how it works? And I think there are a lot of great ideas out there. I'm trying to learn more about them, trying to learn about all these ideas. The fundamental thing behind cognitism is about continuing to update your beliefs and not being absolutely certain about anything. And that includes my own vision of this system, right? Like, that I am always open to changing my perception of it. But I also still fundamentally believe in this idea of the accountability of word, especially when there's dissonance, when there's disagreement between two people. Say you are trying to collaborate with somebody and there's this major disagreement, and no matter how much you fight, no matter how much you try to work through it just through natural conversation, it will not fucking resolve, be it for your emotions or you're just not communicating well enough. What you can do in that moment is clarify clearly your perceptions to each other. Put it down in word in a way that you say, like, this is what I believe, and I think it'll be true in the future. And I'm willing to hold my word to that, right? And enter into a sort of transaction of disagreement with that individual. Then, as time moves forward and reveals, and this is where it gets really confusing, because people are like, who is evaluating, who's in charge? And it's like, you keep thinking these hierarchical ways. I know it's hard to think about a network of all these independent models that are doing sort of parameter exchange where you have localized instances and there's a level of personal trust in those localized instances. I know it's very complex. I know there's a lot of layers, but like, we're talking about designing new systems that are hopefully functional at hundreds of millions of people and minimize corruption over time. There should be a little bit of complexity, enough so that it's not cheatable. What's going on? I'm just ranting. The first version of something like this already is made by like fascists. I mean, I don't want to say fascist because it's such a meaningless word when we throw it at everybody. But like, when you think of social credit, when you have a top-down version of it, a not decentralized version where the voices and the truth is dictated by one, that's how people are going to perceive anything like this, because you're saying, oh, it's like China. And it's like, no, you can have an emergent collective decision-making process. Now, the key thing is that cognitism is designed to function at a scale. So you can have an installation of 6 people, you can have an installation of 20 people, and then you can have installations of thousands of people, and then those different installations can interact with each other via nodes. You can even have your own personal installation. Like, there are different node types for the network, and there's all these layers of security and privacy, but they're designed to help us speak our truths and come together and find a common representation over time as our inconsistencies are shown. Like, we generally forget when we're really confident about something in the past. Like, when we have an argument with somebody, we're like, blah, 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 blah. We usually forget about it. And then, like, later when somebody's proved wrong, somebody might go back and say, like, you were wrong. And they're like, I don't give a shit. And then there's no accountability for the intensity and the certainty that they had at that time, which was actually a distraction from collaborative decision-making at that time. Like, because they were basically pushing into the world something very, very confidently, a lie, pushing into the internet misinformation. By the way, another way that we can move forward is, just yeet the internet. But I do think you need, if you're going to have this free flow of memes throughout there, like, you shouldn't be surprised when you see viral effects and you see sort of misinformation, conspiracy rise up. And you shouldn't be surprised when the filter says, controlled by profit incentive, like the Facebook filters, do not really direct that content in a healthy way. But we can design systems that distribute content specifically designed to improve the collective well-being of those interfacing with it over time. There are a lot of ways to do that. I am just proposing one way that has been thought down to the T. I'm trying to say, here's a way we can do it. Please present to me another way. Please show me where I am wrong, but please understand it fully. Because I have conversations with people where they'll insist they've understood what I'm saying. I was like, no, you're not reflecting back what I have said to you. You're saying different words that do not reflect the same truth to me. And so that's what we have to do. Is sometimes it's hard when I'm like listening to other people's new systems, and they're very, very complex, because like, who gets into this stuff? Who the fuck goes into this field? Like crazy people. Like, who's sitting around writing manifestos about like credit systems and shit like that? Like just trying to make a better world. And so a lot of the times it's very, very verbose, and it's very, very hard to understand. But I just have this vision of this future of all of our voices flowing together in a way that it's actually healthy. Like I can see it. I could see these two dark futures, or these two different futures. One is dark, which is the Facebook metaverse hooked up to heroin VR pods. And two is where we have a much lighter layer of interaction for collective decision making, which is really just interfaced through text. Text is really important, and the idea of speech being the primary entrance for the system is really important, because that creates a very small barrier for people. That means people in tribes in the middle of nowhere, as long as they have some sort of interface, if they're given like phones, then they can interface and they can share their collective vision of truth. And I could go so far into like why there would be direct motivation if it was actually built properly to bring like the technology to small communities, so that they can actually represent their own voices, so that they can rebuild their community based on their own vision, but also based off of people from the outside areas who have more resources, bringing their resources to that dilapidated community because they want to build a better future, right? Because by helping and contributing to that locality, build themselves into a self-sustaining sort of regenerative community, their voice is in this network shown to be reliable and shown to be something worthy of amplification, so that when there are future problems in the future, that we know whose voices to amplify. Right now, we just amplify the same voices over and over and over and over and over again, no matter how wrong they are, no matter how wrong the pundits are on TV, no matter how wrong the politicians lie and don't follow up with their things, no matter brain fart, no matter how much, I don't know, there's just no accountability, right? And we could have accountability across time by creating this collective record of our beliefs, which involves like politicians. They're making promises, right? They're making promises, and we buy into that. And then what percentage of those promises actually come true? What percent of those things that are actually delivered? But we forget so much about what they promised. And so we kind of just get comfortable and don't want to think about it. That's why I don't really believe in representative government, where you have individuals who are trying to speak for other people, because how can they do that? Like, how they have to live, they have to take a shit every day, they have to eat food, they have to think about their own being. But if you have representational government, where its active role is try to reflect back upon the communities a central ethos that is beneficial across time to the collective well-being. And that's very abstract, but it's completely doable. We can heal this world. And we can start directing our collaborative action towards building things that actually help people and are sustainable. We can get rid of dumb things like rent seeking and like planned obsolescence. There are ways to make the idea of markets and the products that get built function so much better and so much more in alignment with social good. And right now we're in this period of time where people are working through ideas that, like, I spent, months on in 2016 getting to a certain point. Like, oh, that's not enough. I went through like prediction markets. I'm like, that's an interesting, exciting concept. Is that enough? No, that's not enough. And there's so many reasons why. And there's so many reasons why a lot of ideas that people are putting forward probably will not solve things. You know, some people just think it's like UBI is the solution. Some people think it's like all you have to do is tax the rich. You know, I sing about that a lot. It's like, if only we just tax the rich. Like, I don't know, maybe if we created a new system of collective decision making so that, you know, the voices that are not traditionally amplified can be amplified when they turn out to be right. Like, how many people, when big rich people try to do things, predict dark futures based on their actions, like, you're gonna crash a super tank of oil or something, and they're like, no, I won't. And then there's no accountability, right? I want accountability to our long-term future. We have this vision of this dark future. We want to avoid it, so we need to work collectively together in a way to move towards a brighter future. But ideally, we're wrong about, like, civilizational collapse. Ideally, we are wrong about that. So that was a fun rant. Today was a rough day. It felt good to get the truth out. I feel that it's so important to speak your truth. I really believe that. To not just consume the views of others, to actively work through it. And that means doing things like writing articles or writing in a journal or making videos, but actually taking the time to process your own views. Not just to read news, but to put it into your own words. The act of putting your truth into your own words actively structures the brain and minimizes cognitive dissonance. There is actually, in the cognitive process of just going through forethought, it is a very healthy process of revealing these inconsistencies. You do need an extra layer of tech because, as I discovered, there are specific people who are so in this need of the feeling of being right that when you present to them their past claims and show that they're not aligned, rather than just accepting that and changing, they sort of double down, or they say that's inconsequential and will not update anything in their priors. And so I think upon that layer, if there was some sort of tokenization of that, whereby it's too complex for this moment. Gotta get better at communicating about the ideas succinctly and in an embodied way that's like, okay, this is what it's like to actually live like this. Because it would be very minimal, you know? It would be like having a fucking Nokia. It would be like, okay, most of the time you're just spending interacting with other people, doing good work, trying to solve problems and make people's lives better, as well as, you know, there is still, like, the idea there will still be the monetary token, and so you can still create security over time by saving this token into your bank. But I would imagine over time, when as this secondary token gets better at allocating our attention and therefore influencing people to distribute their resources in a different way to actually collectively maximize well-being, that stuff. I gotta stop.